Okay, so in the 1980s, I was just about turning into young adult, I'd say. So social life was very much still living at home with mum and dad, being outside a lot, and spent most of the time outside. Very, very different to now. So being outside from, we're talking like 8 o'clock in the morning in the summer until your mother shouted out of the window to either come in and have your dinner or come in and have your bath or just come in. A lot more friendlier. You wasn't so afraid. You didn't have to be so weary about being out as you do now. So I hear from children, yeah. My memories for the unemployed. I had times like that. That was back in the day where every 2 weeks you were waiting by your front door for the postman to drop through your gyro. So anyway, so for you, a gyro is basically equivalent to your money. It's like a cheque, like every 2 weeks you get that through. You have to go and sign on, and a few days later on you get your gyro through the door. Go to the post office and cash it. If not, you'd get if you had children, they'd send you like a book, like it's sort of like a checkbook. And I remember having to do that when my mum was unemployed, and she would send me. You could, at the back of it, you had to sign it, and then my mum had to sign it to say that she's given me permission. There was like a little box there saying, "Do you give Maureen permission to go over and get it?" Me as a young person run over to the post office and go and cash it for my mum. So in hard times, if we didn't have any money, we would trust a lot of the things that we needed. And the shopkeepers were absolutely fine with that, especially if the shop we were trusting stuff from had the post office there, because they'd write it all down in their little book. And by the time we went back to, go and get the money, cash the book, they would just deduct. My dad was a labourer, and my mum was a cleaner. 2 jobs, sometimes 3. One in the morning, very early morning, one in the evening. Sometimes she'll go and clean, like help in the schools and stuff in the afternoons. But what I mostly remember was the 2 jobs, very, very early. In the morning, I was still in bed back then. And my mum going out, I remember opening up my eyes, laying in bed, seeing my mum getting ready, going to work. By the time I was up, by the time I was ready to go to school, 8 o'clock in the morning, my mum was just coming in while I was going out the door. One thing about my mother worked hard, but she looked after her family. So me and my siblings went out to school. How my mother put in sleep, I don't know. But by the time we came back, my mother was ready to go and do her evening job. Dinner was cooked, house was clean. My mother was incredibly house proud. Everything needed to be in its place. We never really had any, because it was just a 3-bedroom flat. We didn't have a good room. Every room was being used. But my mum would make sure that there wasn't a speck of dust on anything at all. So by the time I came back from school, my mum was out the door to go and do her next job. And then she'd come back by the time, I think it was about an hour or so just before I went to bed. What was the housing situation? Well, I would say, I haven't got any statistics or anything, but it was pretty easy. It wasn't that difficult. I mean, for me, my parents had split up after a while. My mum got quite ill, and my older sisters had left home. So I ended up caring for my mum. And my mother tried to let me, no, my mother did sign a waiver to make me succeed her tenancy on the flat. But when it came to me wanting to get my own place, I came up against it just a little bit because I was still quite young. And so it was like, especially as a young person, like trying to think of, well, what can I do? I know that I'm entitled to somewhere. You can't leave me homeless, type of thing. But anyway, I mean, eventually, I had to move from the 3-bedroom. From what I understand, it was about the police going into somebody's house to try and arrest somebody. They weren't there, so I think they shot a mother or somebody like that. But I remember one Saturday while the riots was going on, I mean, there was always there was a sort of like, everybody was talking tension everywhere, because where I was living, I lived in Clapham South, just down the road from Brixton. And I remember one Saturday afternoon, I went to for whatever reason, I went to Brixton with my sister. She was going to take me to Wimpy. And by the time I'd finished my Knickerbocker glory, me and my sister came out of Wimpy, the road was clear. There was people standing incredibly still on either side of that main road, where the McDonald's and stuff is now. That main road was clear. The whole road was full, just waiting for a time for this riot to kick off again. Mm-hmm. And I remember walking, I'm saying to my sister, well, what is going on? Because when the riot was going on, I wasn't allowed to go down that way. It was only because I was going to Wimpy up in Brixton that I was there. So my sister was telling me, listen, hurry up, come and get out of here because it's about to kick off. And that was my first and only real experience of the Brixton riots. Apart from that, I wasn't allowed to go anywhere near it. Brixton had a really bad reputation for a really long time. Even though the riots ended, there was still a lot of racial tension. There was a lot of black people in Brixton, but then there was also white people there that were born and bred in that area that my parents got. We all knew each other, but the perception was that, look, Brixton was a bad place, just don't go there. There was still a lot of racial tension between the police and the people of the area, and you could feel it. But then at the same time, because my parents always used to go to Brixton, go and do their shopping and everything else, we knew everybody on the market.